Okay, kind of starting off from where we left off before. I started the previous video, but, well, I continued last night from the previous video, but I ran into a situation that I guess is new in 4.13. When I was trying to set everything up and actually getting the player in, I noticed that there was something different in the way that the engine pre-creates the character. Before when we get to the part where we actually spawn the player, I have a check to make sure that the actual PC hero is already created inside of the default player character. But for some reason now it's none, so there's no default character. So what I did to fix that is, before we come into our place where we create our main player, I had to pretty much get the character, do a typecast check to see if that was a PC hero character, or it could be something else depending on what template you use or whatever. But if it's not, then I came in here to spawn a PC hero, just a base PC hero with nothing set into it yet, and I had the player controller possess it. So that way, if you run into this issue, and as from what I can tell, it seems like it starts in 3.14, but my previous tutorials was in 3.10, so this could have been a issue from the updates, but for some reason it didn't happen when I was actually using the upgraded demo project, example project. It was already set, but this is a fresh project, so maybe that's why in the new fresh projects it's not already populating that character. But just adding this simple code right here inside of the init data inside of the RPG system, you can fix that, and I will show you how to get here, so in case you are lost and you don't know how to get here. I will close all of this. So if we go down to our plugin and we go to blueprints, we go to RPG system, and inside of the RPG state system, you probably at your event graph normally. So if you go from your event graph into init game data, and right here where we create, where we load our database information, this is where you can add this small piece of code to be able to check the character that's currently set as your default character. If it's not correct, we can spawn the correct type and possess it. So that way everything can be good and steady. And normally with this fresh build, it was none, so I didn't have any reason to actually delete the previous possessee since there was none. But just keep that in mind just in case. I know everything is a little bit different depending on everything in general. So now if we go to our database, I've already created a database, so because of the previous recording, so I will go back over the steps I did. All I did was create new database, navigate to my folder that I created in the previous, the RPG system folder, the data store folder, and I created a database called source.rpg database, and it has to be called source, otherwise the code will not be able to link to that file. So after we had the database, I'm going to make sure this is loaded fresh. So after we go to that database and create it, we created our class. We called it Knight. We linked it to the Knight_C, which is the name of our blueprint _C. And that C is just because it's going to be looking up the blueprints as a class and creating the instance from that class object. We came in here and just set everything to 10 with a natural log for a default curve for our learning curve. Let me cancel this. We also went to actors and created Tim Allen. We set his actor configuration as Tim underscore the toolman underscore C because of the class. We set his default race and his class from what we created before. Gave him a bio and starting stats. And these starting stats also append on top of the base class stats. So that's why you can see that all the beginning stats are 15, 15, 15, 15, 15. We also went in and added our starting map information. So I created a map called starting level. I added the regions, so now it's in the drop down, and these regions are actually the map names that you have for your maps. So we have the map called starting level. We have a starting point called a spawn point, initial spawn point called starting point. So I'm just going to copy that. And if you have the persistent levels named, you can put your persistent level name. I just gave it a name of this place since it's not really being used, but I'm just going to call that area this place since I don't have any kind of persistent level streaming. That's what I was trying to say. Since I don't have a level streaming name or anything in this map, I just gave it any name that I felt like. And then after that, you can come in here and set your starting position, add Tim Allen to your initial party, set your starting time, and your starting money, any other settings that you want. You save that. Now, one thing I did wrong in the video that was never aired, I still had this open when I was trying to load the level. If this is open, it locks the database, so it can't be read. So if you try to run your game with it, it will not run. It will give you a blank screen, and if you look in your output logs, it should say that it failed to initialize database. And if it says failed to initialize database in your output log, then you know that you still have your database manager open and it's reading and locking the file. So I close this. I also think I reorganized this since the last video. I created a levels folder and put in a title screen, which is just a blank level, which should just invoke the system to force it to load the title screen information on screen for the default HUDs that comes with the engine. Then we have starting level, and starting level is the name of our starting level with just that basic generic starting area with that initial character deleted. So we also have the RPG Engine TK folder that I had to add in, and an actor folder, because all of your actor information has to go within this folder structure for the system to have a dedicated folder to scan through to find all your character configuration information for all of your class data and your actor data. Now I'm going to double check and make sure I have all my animations. I have my animation BP. I also have my data files, which is my class data, which is linked to my animation blueprint for the character, so it knows that, hey, I want to use this animation blueprint for this character. And then I have my actor data for Tim the Toolman, and I have my skeleton information in here. all my images for my dialogue trees and things like that. And that's automatically linked inside of the database already by the actual class name for these blueprints. So now we should be able to come in here, drop in a spawn point in props and waypoint. Make sure this is dropped to the ground because it has to detect that it has a ground collision to be able to spawn your character in. If you have it in the middle of the air and the spawn point cannot detect ground, it assumes that you are still trying to, the system is still trying to stream in the level information for wherever you have their spawn point, and it will hold your character in place while it waits for the level to stream, and then it will fade the screen in once your character, once a ground or collision detection has been detected under it. So if you hit end, it'll drop it to the ground and and that will assure you that it will spawn your character when the time is ready. All right, so we're going to give it a name of starting point. I'm just going to paste that in from where I copied it. And one other thing that I did in the other video is, since it's a fresh project, there's a lot of different things for the input, the game mode, and everything else that you have to set up. Manual changes that I'm a lazy, efficient kind of person, so I don't like doing mundane things over and over again when I start a new project. So one thing I'm going to upload to the Gumroad for either the example project or the documentation, probably both, so people can see it, is when you go to these and you go to import, I have actually exported the configuration files for those. So you have one for input, one for mapping modes, one for navigation mesh, one for the navigation system, and then one for packaging. And you should be able to load these INI in, and it will set up all your default configurations. The only thing is for mapping mode, if I import that right now, for mapping mode, if you load it in, I defaulted the editor startup map and the game map to none, because depending on how you have your own setup set up, it won't be able to find said maps. So you can go in here after you load that, which will load your default configurations for your PC hero, play HUD, and everything that it needs to be right here in these settings. And then you can just manually set up your map, which I'm going to set for the title screen for both of these. And I've already done my input. If you load your character in and you can't move, your input probably is not imported. Also for your navigation mesh and your navigation system, I have that set up to make sure that it does dynamic nav mesh generation, which the NPCs and other objects use for big maps, so you don't have to just sit there and generate an entire large map of nav mesh. You can just have it spawn dynamically based on the invoker that is inside of the NPC or monster object. So that way you can have them move wherever you want to in the world, or place them anywhere you want in the world, and you know that they're definitely going to have a nav mesh to move around without having to generate for 30 or 40 minutes an entire large map. So we got inputs, we got nav mesh, we got system. That's done. And I also loaded the packaging information. The only thing that's really in here is the information for shipping, because you have to make sure, again, like my other video says, you have to make sure that it will automatically bake in the RPG system folder to make sure it brings in the database information. And I thought there was a place where I had to force the baking of the RTK folder. The RPG Engine RTK, but that might have been fixed by me loading the class information and not the blueprint information now into the system. So everything should be set as far as you need to with those INIs. I'm gonna upload those right after I finish this video, and you should be able to download those and bring those in without having to manually type in and set up all these configurations just to get your inputs mapped, your settings mapped, and all the other stuff. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it. We should be able to just load our title screen. And always start with your title screen. Especially when you create a new database, because it has to create those dynamic it has to create the dynamically created quick save and active database files for when you create a new game. Because if you just start in the map, it doesn't know where your initial spawn point is, it doesn't know where anything is, and it has to use that database source to determine that. So if you just open your title screen, I'm going to save everything real quick. Okay, so we start our title screen, we get it, we go in here and click new game or journey, whatever. And then it found the starting point and it faded us in. So now I don't have my controller hooked up because it's in my microphone, so I should be able to use the arrows to move around. Shift is run, so we go into our sprint. I can jump, I can dance, I can kill myself. Whee! Okay, so that should cover everything of the defaults. I think the error is because I deleted the character. Yes. This happens when you delete the main character, because the radar is constantly looking for the character and trying to, I wouldn't say fully constantly, but it's trying to update the radar based on your position. And, you know, you deleted a character, so now it has nothing to find. So that should get you up and running from a custom character that you want from Mixamo, or I guess Fuse, because it uses the same thing, or just a general character that you want to use in place of my crappy characters that I have in there. To get it into the system, to use the animation blueprint as a template, replacing all of the individual components in there with your own animations, getting that character configured as a party member, getting it into the system to where you can have fun with it and start making your game. Again, if anyone has any other questions, please let me know. I'm not the best tutorial person in the world, but I know how to get, other people to understand what I'm trying to say eventually. Let me know if you have any other questions. Send me an email, leave me a message on Facebook or something like that, and I will definitely get back with you with feedback or comments or anything that can help you with the wall that you're stuck in. Thank you. Have a nice day.